Welcome to today's wellness webinar. I'll make an immediate start just for the purpose of time. 30 minutes isn't a long time to be delivering these kind of sessions, but I just want to say at the moment we can see there's 184 people who've joined. So thank you all so much for taking time out of your day to be able to come and listen to us and join one of these sessions. So my name's Lauren and I'm one of the health and wellness experts with PAM Wellness, which is the corporate health division of the PAM group, and we're an occupational health provider. And today we'll be exploring emotional regulation for managers, and most specifically we'll be exploring emotional intelligence and emotional regulation first and foremost. And we'll look at the very, very many benefits, only like a bit of a snapshot of that, of the benefits of emotional regulation as well. And then we'll dive into the big 5 personality traits. So we'll look at the impact of personality types and how they can influence employees and how they influence employees in response to stressed and demanding situations. And then we'll discuss the different coping styles that we can engage in before we look into more specific approaches to be able to facilitate employees' emotional regulation, including our own, and build resilience. And then we'll share some tips on how to foster healthy relationships in the workplace. So I hope you enjoy. Before we dive in though, just so that you're aware of what to expect from the session today, we do have 45 minutes roughly together this morning. And part of our role is to deliver quite a wide, varied range of webinars and workshops and trainings. And we deliver on a variety of different topics. So today is a 30-minute high-level taster session of some of the training and the workshops that we deliver, generally speaking. And we offer these free sessions once a month so that you can see a little bit of what we do, basically, and learn something in the process maybe as well. All of our free taster sessions are available on our YouTube channel. So if you go into YouTube and you just type in PAM Wellness, you'll be able to see all of the other sessions that we've delivered in the past. And so just a reminder, today's session is also recorded, as I've mentioned just before the recording started. So it'll be also available to view on our channel as well. So yeah, I hope you do enjoy the session. So feel free to, if you've got any questions as we go along the session, please feel free to pop them in the chat box or in the Q&A, and we'll save a little bit of time at the end to answer as many of those as we possibly can at the end. Hopefully, there'll be things that we can answer as well, so we'll do our best on that front. And if you do enjoy the session today and you would like a little bit more information about services, or you'd like to discuss training or workshop bookings, please take a little screenshot of the email address below there. I'll reshare it at the end as well, just so that you have it if you need it. But feel free to contact us if you have any queries or any questions at all. So yeah, let's dive in. So we can't really talk about emotional regulation without talking about emotional intelligence first. And emotional intelligence is perceived as the ability to recognize and understand our own emotions. And it also encompasses the skills and the strategies that individuals use to be able to regulate their own emotions, and also view and consider the impact that their emotions have on other people as well. Individuals with high emotional intelligence are able to understand the physical, mental, and social impact that their emotions have on the brain, on the body, on their relationships. And it's just a huge skill that we can use to be able to help us in so many areas of life. And to understand this further, I'm just going to introduce you to, if you're not familiar with it already, to the model of emotional intelligence. And this was brought to us by an American psychologist called Daniel Goleman. And it kind of helps us to understand emotional intelligence and where emotional regulation might sit and how these two kind of work together. And it's quite an interesting model. There's lots of different models, but we've used this one specifically because it also kind of incorporates an element of organizational workplace focus as well. So as you can see on the screen here, this model is typically broken into 4 core competencies. So the first one is the top left there in the deep orange, and this is self-awareness. And this is the ability to be able to recognize, understand our personal moods, our emotions and drives, as well as their effect on other people as well. But really, it is our ability to be able to monitor our own emotional state and to be able to identify and correctly name our emotions. And that's kind of like the foundation. And it also includes self-confidence levels in there too. And then if we go down into the lighter orange there in the bottom left, we have self-management. So this is being adaptable, having the ability to be able to control, redirect disruptive impulses, moods, intense emotions, and being able to maintain a positive outlook. And then we're off to the right into the white section there. So relationship management at the bottom. This is about working with other people, working together as part of a team when needed, being able to deal with conflict, managing relationships with other people, building networks, having that ability to be able to find common ground and build rapport. And then up we go for our final box, and this is social awareness. So this is about having empathy, or the ability to be able to understand the emotional makeup of other people. We're also including in here that organizational awareness too, and being able to understand different aspects of the organization that we're in, including the working structure, the culture of the organization. And it also consists of the understanding of things like political, social, and economic issues as well that might affect the organization, so at that wider scale. So it's our ability to read the room, it's our ability to be able to recognize people's emotions, and it's also that ability to be able to factor in the wider layers of the environment as well. So you might also have noticed that there's two sides here. So we have this element of recognition, an element of regulation here too. So self-awareness and social awareness are essential for recognition. Without them, we can't recognize them. And that's really at the center of emotional regulation. And to bring out the best in others, we need to be able to bring out the best in ourselves as well. These two things go together, and that's where self-awareness comes into play as well. And then we've got self-management at the bottom and relationship management, and they both fall under regulation. So the actions that we take to manage our emotions as a consequence of this gained awareness or the lack of awareness. So we gain self-awareness to manage ourselves. We gain social awareness to better manage our relationships. And awareness is key for regulation. That's the key message here. It really is a vital component of emotional intelligence is regulation. And with all of these, there's a bit of a bell curve that exists, we generally tend to fall in either high performing, average performing, or low performing. And low and high performers tend to account for about 15% of the workforce, and most of us will sit in that kind of average category there, in the 70% I've lost my sentence there, sorry. But 70% of workforce, will fall into the average performer category. So this brings us to our emotional regulation. Those with low emotional intelligence may not be able to accurately manage to recognize their emotions, and that makes it hard to address them appropriately. And if we don't understand, if we're not able to recognize them, we may struggle to understand the causes and the triggers of our emotions. And so it's very difficult to know how to handle them and to make a plan and a strategy to handle them. And then if we have low emotional intelligence, this can result in us being a little bit more impulsive and having knee-jerk reactions and, not maybe taking the time that we need to be able to thoughtfully respond and self-reflect. And people with low emotional intelligence may also struggle to express their emotions as a consequence. And this can have an impact on our communication with other people as well. So we may have more conflict, more misunderstandings, which can lead to frustration and upset further down the line too. And it can also mean that we may struggle with, reduced empathy for others as well. That ability to recognize in ourselves and be able to realize emotions and recognize emotions in others really helps with empathy. And this can make interpersonal conflict more likely. It can make conflict harder to resolve as well. So I want to start off as well by saying that emotions are all natural, no matter what they are. Stress, sadness, fear, anger, joy, frustration, and the list goes on. And they arise from stimuli, and it's normal, it's a natural process, and it's often a very healthy process even. And even with those emotions that may be less comfortable, but they're really important to help us navigate, how do we feel in the things that we're encountering around the world. And they really help us to influence the way that we interpret our situations, the things that we're living in the day-to-day, for example. But struggling to identify them, understand the triggers, the impact, doesn't help us to be able to regulate or control them or channel them, if you know, that's probably a better word for it. And that can lead down, down a path of more emotional driven responses, impulsive behaviors, conflict, resentment. And this isn't really something that's going to be beneficial for us. So what is emotional regulation more specifically? It is a hugely beneficial therapeutic skill. It's a skill that we can learn at any point in life, and we can, work towards mastering it throughout our lives as well. It's a process that enables us to modify the intensity and the duration of the emotions that we're experiencing. And it's how we respond to these emotions and to that environmental stimuli. And overall, basically, it's about down regulating our emotional experience. So we're not living in the intensity of it. And therefore, we are also being more in control of that emotional reaction. And it can really help us to view a situation through a slightly different perspective. And emotional regulation is an umbrella term, really, that kind of it captures all of the different strategies and coping strategies that us individuals use to be able to engage with and respond to our emotions. But it's not about suppressing or masking our emotions, right? It's absolutely not. It's not about pretending to be fine when we're not. This can lead to cycles of shame, of negativity, of rumination, for example. And again, not what we want. On the opposite, on the contrary, it's more about acknowledging them and deciding the best course of action to take. It's a skill that we can master, that we can channel, we can use to channel our intense emotions, and we can remain constructive. So it's about being in a heated conversation or a debate, but without resulting in losing our temper, shouting and insulting people, for example, and we remain calm even though we're feeling the feels. It's about being able to find the ability to problem solve when we feel submerged by stress. So it really is an important part of our resilience. And practicing emotional regulation over time can really help us to experience less intense negative emotions and experiences overall, and we can help us to experience overall, beneficial, positive, and heightened emotional and psychological well-being. It has that knock-on effect on relationships, higher resilience, and also it can really help us to face stressful or challenging situations in a more effective kind of way. And the benefits for managers to practice this and to really focus on mastering this, the list is endless. So self-awareness, we'll develop more self-awareness, we'll have improved trigger management, improved decision-making abilities, greater resilience, enhanced ability to reframe our thoughts and perspectives, greater communication skills, heightened empathy, greater clarity, improved conflict management, and we will also be role modeling healthy emotional regulation strategies and hacks to our teams as well. So that can only bring benefits to our teams too. And it's true, the effect on our team is significant. So high emotional intelligence in leaders develop the ability to be able to recognize other people's emotions and the dynamics that are in play within our organization. Through improved abilities to communicate, we'll be able to collaborate more effectively with our peers, and that can only bring greater productivity and creativity within the organization. And we'll also experience, I do apologize, my voice is going already. We'll also experience reduced conflict in the team, greater engagement, and overall more positive dynamics and reduced turnover as well. So it is a very beneficial thing to be focusing on. And it also benefits the wider workforce as well. It can really help us. It can be a very, very valuable skill to be, implementing and encouraging in the workplace. Improved communication skills with others, improved time management, improved problem solving skills. We can get better satisfaction levels in our workplace and general overall well-being at work too, which facilitates good physical and mental well-being as well. Now, what about these 5 personality traits? Well, they kind of come in quite handy when it comes to emotional regulation. So a trait is a particular characteristic that can produce a particular type of behavior, and it's it can be set, we can use it basically to be able to identify maybe our tendencies for certain thought patterns and feelings and behaviors that are maybe more consistent with us and longer lasting. And typically, we're more dependent on personality than we are on our environment when it comes to personality traits and these types of behaviors and feelings and thought patterns. So these 5 are also known as the Big 5 personality traits. And we can use the acronym OCEAN to be able to remember these traits. And these traits are openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. So this model suggests that there are 5 main key personality traits that can significantly impact our behaviors in the workplace. And each trait represents a bit of a continuum. So we go through a questionnaire, the Big 5 inventory it's called, and we self-report a score from 1 to 5. And that gives us a score in each of these different traits. And it gives us a bit of a continuum and a dominant trait, basically. And we'll all fall along the spectrum for each trait. So we may have, some more of one, less of the other. And we'll end up having one that, or maybe a couple that are maybe more dominant for us. So there are quite a lot of different personality models out there, but the Big 5 is the one that's the most commonly used in academic psychology. And if we're understanding how these traits influence our employees' behaviours and also our own, we can better organise our workplaces. We can better recruit, better develop and retain top talent. We can, improve leadership development programs, and we can improve our team dynamics as well. So it's important because, for example, a sales role might require someone who scores higher in extroversion compared to introversion, who may struggle with certain elements of that role. And a project management role may necessitate individuals to maybe be higher in conscientiousness, for example. So it's kind of like using the personality traits and channeling it to put it to its best advantage. And leaders who understand their own personality traits and those of their team members can adapt their leadership styles accordingly and effectively. Now, I'm just going to make a little important bracket here, which may not seem related, but hang on and hold on with me. Emotional regulation is an internal process mostly, right? So we're kind of looking within to identify our emotions, to be able to find solutions to regulate them and take action with them. So it's an individual internal skill, but it can also be an external process as well. Through the support of other people, then that emotional regulation can be facilitated too. And this is where it's interesting from a manager's perspective. So we can really view the Big 5 as a tool or a compass of some sort that we can use to navigate our own emotions, our own emotional intelligence, our own emotional regulation strategies. And then we can also support our teams to do so as well. And that feeds into that external regulation as well. And when it comes to the Big 5 personality trait groups, this is just a bit of a summary for you so you can kind of see. So we were talking about it being a spectrum, and this kind of shows the 2 different ends of that spectrum. And it's important to note that people will not be 100% just one trait. Like we said, we're going to be a unique combination of all the different 5 dimensions. So somebody may be mostly extroverted and have high conscientiousness and low something else, for example. So these are kind of broad categories of personality traits that most people will score in some kind of level. And this is really just to kind of show that wide variety of these spectrums. So openness is about, it features characteristics like imagination, insight. And people who are high in this trait also tend to have broad ranges of interest as well. They are curious about the world and other people, and they're eager to learn new things and enjoy new experiences. So there's a bit of an adventurous and creative trait with people who score highly in openness. Conscientiousness includes high levels of thoughtfulness, good impulse control, goal-directed behaviors. We tend to be more organized. I'm saying we as if that's me. I don't actually know that if I'm conscientious or not. Sorry, slip of the tongue there. I would like to think so, but you never know. They may be more organized and more mindful of detail. Planning ahead is a big trait here as well, and quite a lot of insight into how their behaviors will affect other people too. So they're mindful also of deadlines. Extroversion is about excitability, sociability, talkativeness, assertiveness, high levels of emotional expressiveness. And people who score highly in extroversion are outgoing, and they tend to gain energy and feel energized, feel excited in social situations and being around other people. Agreeableness includes attributes such as trust, kindness, affection, and people who are high in agreeableness tend to be more cooperative as well. And then finally, we have a little bit of a different trait here, Neuroticism is a trait that's characterized by sadness, moodiness, emotional instability when we score highly in neuroticism. And individuals who do score highly in this trait tend to experience maybe more mood swings, anxiety, irritability, and sadness as well. And so, as you can see, there's one end of the spectrum and the opposite characteristics from the other end of the spectrum too. And personality traits can have a huge influence on how often they're exposed to stresses, the types of stresses that we come across, and the perception of these stresses. So being able to identify our most dominant trait can help us to understand our coping strategies in the face of these stresses and how we might approach them to regulate our emotions and respond adequately too. So, for example, extroversion, conscientiousness, and openness, they're all linked to perceiving stressful events as positive challenges, as an opportunity, to put our coping resources to the test and give them a really good run. And then agreeableness is linked to low interpersonal conflict and social stress as well. So, there's a lot of behaviours and a lot of things that may happen behind the scene to avoid that conflict, or to be, very agreeable in that conflict and problem resolution. And then we have not high neuroticism. So this is quite, people who have high neuroticism will generally have quite a high exposure to stress and negative impacts on emotional intelligence. Whereas low neuroticism combined with high conscientiousness can predict, extremely low levels and high levels of emotional intelligence. Openness, just to mention one last one, is very much linked with the ability to be able to successfully develop emotional intelligence due to constant learning from new experiences. So we can kind of already see how these traits might also influence individuals and teams in the workplace. And we end up, resorting to falling into different coping styles, depending very much on obviously the situation and our dominant traits, basically. So we end up having engagement coping strategies and disengagement coping strategies. So engagement coping is aimed at actively dealing with the stressor or the stress-related emotions. So we're facing them, and more into problem solving, seeking support, regulating our emotions, acceptance, and things like that. And then we have more disengagement coping strategies. And these are on the other end, and they kind of entail avoiding confrontation, confrontation of the threat, or the kind of related distress that we're experiencing. And we can kind of fall into patterns of avoidance, denial, wishful thinking, blaming others as well. So high neuroticism scoring is very much linked to a high tendency for avoidance, and that's due to the high vulnerability to stress, which can lead to disengagement coping strategies. Whereas high extroversion score is more associated with strong sensitivity to reward, and we're more likely to be able to reach out for support. So that's more of an engagement coping strategy. And obviously, we can't go through all of the different types in just 30 minutes, but we're going to look into things that we can do. What can we do as managers? How can we support and facilitate emotional regulation in our teams, help people and help our teams and ourselves to be able to build resilience? And we'll look at some strategies as well in the next few slides. So first, we need to acknowledge that there's no one size fits all because of this variation in scoring and this kind of spectrum that will all sit somewhere on. That wasn't a sentence, sorry, that will all sit on somewhere on that spectrum. So to ensure that we're meeting emotional needs of our employees, understanding their personality traits to better be able to provide that support is going to be really important. So we need to have a bit more of a person-centered approach. That's really strongly recommended. And a person-centered approach is one that nurtures and promotes three core elements. The first is congruence. And so this is agreement, harmony, compatibility between individuals. And it also means having a consistent state of behavior. It means there is consistency between the goals, the values, the attitudes that are projected, and the actual behavior observed. So there's alignment between the people, but also there's alignment between the way that we're thinking, feeling, and the way that we're behaving, right? So agreement, harmony, and compatibility. Unconditional positive regard is also incredibly important when we're supporting our teams. So this is the basic acceptance and support of a person, regardless of what the person says or does. So we are removing that element of judgment, and we are replacing it with offering compassion to people, even if they've done something that we would assume or esteem to be wrong. So, for example, a therapist practicing unconditional positive regard would respond with compassion and respect to a person in a treatment room who may have lied or, done something wrong to somebody else, for example. And then finally, we have that empathy. Empathy is incredibly important when it comes to supporting ourselves, supporting others. We've already kind of, very briefly touched upon it, but there is a big difference between empathy and sympathy, and it's important to recognize the difference. Empathy can really drive and build relationships, and it doesn't have to involve saying lots of things. Quite the opposite sometimes. It's about showing that we're there for someone, we're listening to them, and really just trying to put the focus on them to understand their experience and what it's like from their stance, not through the filter of our own life experience. So because empathy is the ability to be able to emotionally understand what other people feel, see things from their point of view, and we imagine ourselves in their shoes, in their place, for example, it's, essentially it's about putting ourselves in someone else's position and removing ourselves from the equation and really considering what it might feel for them. So taking this empathetic approach is really helpful for all people of all different personality traits, but especially for people who do tend to score quite highly with neuroticism or high introversion, for example. It can be a really validating and comforting thing to put into place. So how can we build empathy? There's a few opportunities that we've put on there that you can see on the left there. But leaders who master empathy perform higher in areas such as coaching, engaging other people, decision making. But empathy also allows people to build social connection with others, and it helps us to understand what they're thinking and feeling. And we can therefore, use that information to respond appropriately. We also learn to regulate our own emotions in the process, and not only, support other people. And also empathy is really interesting because it's not only just giving us that help, that assistance to understand and then take action, but it really promotes and encourages helping behaviors. So I think that's also really interesting when we think of those helping behaviors and that emotional contagion that we can have in our teams. I think that's also going to be really, really valuable. So really important for us to take opportunities to increase our empathy where possible. Carry out visual observations with your team. Just take note, practice that. Write a journal, maybe keep some notes as ideas as to how you can best support your people and your colleagues. Check out your own body language as well. Are you kind of communicating what you want to be communicating? Use mirrors, videos, things like that, for example. Check in with other managers as well, gain their perspective. It's good to get out of our own head bubbles and be able to get tips and advice from others. And obviously plan regular one-to-ones with your employees so you're gaining more insight into their needs and where they're at. Now, there's something called emotional bidding as well. And this is important to be able to recognize because emotional bidding refers to when someone is expressing an emotion in order to be able to emotionally connect with you or with another person. And it's about someone bidding for our attention, our affection, and our support. And while this might not sound like a great thing, it's actually a very, very important thing in terms of like creating relationships, bonding with people, enhancing the quality of relationships between individuals in and outside of the workplace. It helps to build trust, to build loyalty, and to develop teamwork. So personality traits really can affect how often and how frequently we engage in emotional bidding. And it's really important for managers to, if you notice that there is emotional bidding occurring, not to ignore it. It's really important to be able to respond to it. And there are three different ways that we can respond. One, it can be verbal. So, we're asking questions. How are you doing? You're giving statements, for example, a genuine kind statements of support, right? So we're not just saying something to sound good. This is coming from a genuine place. So we can also communicate and respond through our body language, our eye contact, and smiling and open body language, for example. And then we've also got these behavioral responses too. So supporting, with workloads, acts of generosity or kindness, empathetic listening, offering food or beverages. And then by responding, we're basically creating a space of safety, of non-judgmental space, where we can actually allow emotions to be experienced, acknowledged, identified, accepted. And we're actually creating a space where emotional regulation can actually take place. And we're reducing the triggers for things spiraling and for kind of avoidance techniques to be more encouraged. And ultimately, we're supporting building a space of resilience. So finally, just a few quick tips on how can we focus on building healthy relationships and healthy relationship management for you managers. So turn towards instead of away. Lean into the emotion that's being expressed if you can, to a degree, obviously, but react in an appropriate and positive way when someone expresses an emotion. So if someone makes a funny comment, acknowledge that, smile, laugh, kind of thing. We want to, that is an acceptance and acknowledgement. And this is really, really helpful, to be able to allow people to express their emotions. And use helpful complaints instead of criticism. So if you have some feedback to give to somebody, just be mindful that some traits may be more sensitive to criticism. So state your needs, no attacking, no blaming, no global judgments if you possibly can. Create an action plan together as how you can change that behaviour, modify it, tweak it, put it to its best use. And describe your complaint as your perception, not as the absolute truth. And then our third point here is about handling a situation where someone is emotionally overwhelmed or stressed. So if it's too much, take time out of the conflict conversation if you can, at least 10 minutes, just to get a bit of a breather for all parties involved, and take time to calm down and relax and get yourself back to a state of general, more relaxation at least. And use fewer words in these situations if you can. The more words we use, the less effective that is. Fewer words helps us to understand better and be able to resolve the conflict a little bit more as well. Regularly make praise, say thanks, make that a habit, recognize people's achievements and the good things that they do. This is very, very helpful as well for teams too. And try to choose self-disclosure and connection, and avoid things like attacking, defensive kind of responses, avoidance, denying, things like that. Self-disclosure really helps to form strong relationships. It builds trust. It can really help with that empathetic approach as well. And it can really help with, just overall greater cooperation and understanding of one another. So thank you all so much for listening to me today. Some of the key takeaways of our session. Emotional regulation is an important therapeutic skill. Mastering it is something that will benefit all of us. And the big five is a valuable tool to help us to be able to do that for ourselves, for our colleagues, and best support our team as well. And remember, a one-size-fits-all approach isn't going to work necessarily. So focusing on a person-centered approach that nurtures those three key elements of congruence and positive self-regard and empathy is really going to be key. I'll just change the settings here a little bit so I can actually allow you guys to maybe speak out if you want to ask some questions. But just so you know, we deliver a variety of different topics, 80 plus. It is a big topic. I've just seen that one pop up there. It's a big, big topic. This is normally a 90-minute session that we deliver. Yeah, it was a very brief overview. But we do also do a lot of different topics, and we also have quite a lot of sessions that are directed specifically at managers as well. And if you want to have another look at some of our other YouTube sessions as well, have a little look at PAM Wellness on YouTube. There's loads of videos that you can follow to see if there's something of interest there. And also remember, if you would like to find out a little bit more about our sessions and trainings and workshops, please contact our business support team. They'll be happy to help.